Okay, here we go on with our discussion. Fitness is measured as reproductive success. In other words, the number of offspring that you produce. So there's a pressure on individuals in a population not only to survive, but also to find and attract a mate. Now, sometimes features that enhance sexual attractiveness, okay, for example, the very colorful plumage of a peacock may be a disadvantage because this same trait, since they stand out so much, would also attract its predators. Okay, so one certainly has to be careful about, their features. Their sexual attractive features, don't want to expose the organism also to predation. Of course, there's nothing the organism can do about that, but they're going to be not favored, obviously, if that's the case. And their frequency, the gene pool for that trait will decrease. Macroevolution. Okay, so what do we mean by macroevolution? Macroevolution deals with significant changes. Okay, so for example, the development of upright posture would be an example of macroevolution. The source of macroevolution is something called pre-adaptation. That is the development of new features through the refinement of existing ones. So the functions of the different types of forelimbs in different organisms are all different, but their anatomy, that is the structure, what the forelimbs look like, is similar, even though they're shaped differently. So changes have occurred in the anatomical plan rather than redesigning the forelimb for each organism. And this we can see in this picture here, showing you what we call homologous structures for the human, okay, the cat, the whale, and the bat. In 1843, Richard Owen defined homology as the same organ in different animals under every variety of form and function. So the organs, as different as a bat's wing, okay, a seal's flipper, a cat's paw, and a human hand have a common underlying structure of bones and muscles. And Owen reasoned that there must be a common structural plan for all vertebrates, as well as for each class of vertebrates. Homologous traits that organisms possess are due to the fact that they have shared a common ancestor. So the appendages in the illustration, they have similar bone structure, but each appendage is used for different purposes, okay? The human uses the appendage for grasping, okay? The cat uses his appendage for running. The whale for swimming, okay, or a seal or a whale, whatever you like, and the bat uses his appendage for flying. But the point here is that the structure is similar, okay, even though they have different shapes. So there have been changes then in the anatomical plan rather than completely redesigning the forelimb of each organism. And that is one of the evidences of macroevolution. Another example of macroevolution is what we call vestigial organs, genetically determined structures that once were important to an ancestral species that with time have lost most or all of the function in a given species, now are of no use in the current species. In other words, the evolved species still carries the DNA for that particular structure. So a structure that was once important, like an appendix, okay, is of no use in humans, okay? In our ancestors, an appendix was a fermentation chamber, but we only have a remnant of what used to be this large fermentation chamber, okay? Also, another evidence is embryological development. If you take a look at embryos, okay, they indicate common ancestry for many distantly related species. If you look at the embryos of some organisms like a human and a whale, okay, you will see that the embryos are similar and they have gill slits and tails, okay, whereas in humans the tails have disappeared. The gill slits in the whales have remained, but in humans, they have not. So if you look at different embryos, they all are similar, and that's an interesting point also. And maybe we can even take a look at that. Here are some examples of embryos that we can see kind of look the same, okay? And these species are distantly related. So for example, the fish, salamander, tortoise, chick, rabbit, and human. If you look at the embryos here, the very beginning of development, they're quite similar. And we see as development continues, then some things start to change. I mean, obviously, they develop into different organisms. Certain things like tails in humans will be absent, and they will remain in things like fish and in salamander. And you know, we have gill slits here, but of course we don't have gill slits, but fish do have gill slits. So you can see here the embryological development. In this picture, you can see this is the human skeleton. This is all that's left of the tail, okay, that in other organisms, a lot of mammals still have that, but we just have this little remnant left. Okay, here's the remnant of the fermentation chamber. We just have this little appendix that's left over. There's other examples as well. We don't need to go into do a dissertation of this, but in any event. Okay, enough of that. Okay, so, and the other thing is DNA is another evidence. By comparing the DNA, it's possible to see how similar the sequencing is between two closely related species. Okay, so let's see if we can take a look at that also. So this picture shows us here some certain segments of DNA. Gets a little complex, but you can see that there are similarities between the ancestor of the roundworm and the insects and the mollusks, echinoderms like starfish, and the cephalochordates, which are the lancelets, and then vertebrates. Okay, you can see there are certain similarities in certain regions of the DNA, and you can understand then with a genetic study the same thing. Okay, so this brings us back now to what we want to talk about now is mass extinction and changes to the environment. Okay, so I still need to do sharing, but we need to look at something over here. Okay, so we're going to change our screen.